Welcome to Weight Loss and Wellness for Real, the podcast where people like you get the practical solutions and support you need to permanently lose the physical and mental weight so you can feel better and live the life you want in the body and mind you want. If you're looking to overcome your stress eating, overeating, binging behaviors, and move to a place of freedom with food and your body, you're in the right place. Just a reminder that this podcast represents my own opinions. The content here should not be taken as medical advice. The content here is for educational and informational purposes only. Please consult your doctor or healthcare professional for any individual medical questions you may have. Hello, friends, and welcome. I am glad you are here. This is episode 62 of the podcast, Weight Loss and Wellness for Real. And we are going to talk today all about how to get unstuck. So if you've ever felt like you're in a rut and couldn't get out, or maybe you're in a rut right now and keep kind of trying to bust out of it and make changes that you want to make, but you just can't make it happen, this episode is for you. Most of us have experienced a rut or feeling stuck at times, and this can relate to so many aspects of our life, not just in weight loss or trying to create new healthy habits. This can be a rut in relationship patterns, feeling stuck in your work life, or just life in general. It's kind of like when we feel we're sort of on this hamster wheel, running and running, but going nowhere. We are going to focus on health and weight loss ruts today, because kind of what the focus of this podcast is about. But you can apply a lot of these things to all the other areas of your life you might be feeling like you're in a rut or feeling stuck in. So if you're in a pattern of behavior around food, not losing weight, and you really want to, and you're just feeling very stuck and can't break out of your ruts, I'm going to offer some really practical ways to get out of this pattern and get some movement going and getting yourself on your way to your goals. You can head over, before we get started, you can head over to my website at heatherheynen.com. Heynen is spelled Heynen. You can get some information over there on how I work with clients, mostly online. I still do some mental health therapy in my practice over at my office, but I do tend to work with my weight loss and life coaching clients online, sometimes over phone sessions, but you can go get details over there about working with me in that capacity. Also, I have another podcast you can check out if you're into intermittent fasting or curious about it or anything like that, and that is called the Heather Heynen Intermittent Fasting Podcast. Okay, let's move on and just get into what we're talking about today. So moving out of a rut or that stuckness really does start with our thinking, and this has to do with how we think about change. So first off, you really want to recognize and understand what your comfort zone is. And so understanding what keeps us in this rut, what thinking patterns are keeping us there, is key. So again, and I know this is repeat from past episodes, but this is the truth and I'm going to keep preaching it. Awareness and understanding is the beginning to getting unstuck or out of a rut. It's really often a hard pill to swallow that we ourselves are keeping ourselves stuck, but really taking ownership of this and understanding we do have control and getting curious and not judgmental, just getting very curious about why we are comfortable where we are at. Because, if we are in a rut or we are stuck, this sounds a little counterintuitive, but it is actually because we are comfortable. And this is what we kind of need to take ownership of. We need to understand it, take ownership of it in order to move out of it. So this is how it works. Remember, being comfortable doesn't mean happy or optimal, okay? Comfort can come from staying in patterns of thoughts, feelings, and or behaviors that we are simply used to. So, this can keep us in a very negative place, but because we are used to it, because it's familiar, because we are experiencing comfort, and our brain loves comfort because it can serve energy when we are in comfort. So, you may be caught in your comfort zone, a situation that feels super familiar because often because of our early childhood experiences. Remember, this is often where patterns and habits of thought, feeling, and behaviors come from. The truth is, we do have research out there that many people who grew up in loving and supportive families rarely find themselves in negative ruts compared to those of us who grew up in more dysfunctional family systems or harmful emotional environments. So anyone in that space often has a comfort zone that feels familiar, but is still harmful. When trying to move out of a negative rut, it's helpful to ask ourselves questions like, does an aspect of this situation I'm in, this rut, feel familiar? Starting to explore this is the first step towards movement out of the stuckness. An example that has happened for me personally and many clients I've worked with, is sort of this hamster wheel of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors around eating patterns. This habit of, the example I'm going to use is this habit of overeating at the end of the day, and then the next morning or right after the overeating that evening, making a promise that, okay, this is going to change. I'm not going to do this again. But then the next evening rolls around and it's overeating as usual. And then the next morning saying again, not tonight, I'm not going to do it tonight, but again, it happens. And as you look at it, you can see it's a pattern or a rut that you're stuck in, and it's not helping, and it's actually harming any weight loss or health goals you have, but you just can't hop out of it as much as you want to. So asking yourself, does any of this feel familiar in regards to past patterns? So sometimes I might hear things from clients when I ask this question, things like, well, when I was a kid, my family always ate together in the evenings, and then we would all sit down in front of the TV with more snacks, and that was such a nice time. I felt very safe and secure and happy there. And so now we know that overeating in the evening creates a feeling of safe, secure, and happy. And this would be why we keep recreating the pattern that is now actually harming our weight and health. Or I have heard things like, well, all my food was controlled as a child. We were restricted from such and such foods. And so when I did get access to those foods, I would overeat them as quickly and as much as I possibly could because I knew I wouldn't get them again for a while. So now we know this person feels comfort in the restriction part. So being restricted from food feels familiar, right? So again, this is not a happy or positive feeling. It's very negative, but it feels very familiar. So there's comfort there. But also then feels comfort in the overeating, maybe secret eating and binging, because this is also familiar to the brain and creates momentary relief and enjoyment like this overeating did as a younger person. So starting to become aware of what patterns of thinking, feelings, and behavior feels familiar helps us to start to uncover and understand and find clarity in our ruts and stuckness. And this awareness and clarity brings us understanding, and we need this understanding to begin to move the needle and get us unstuck. And so what happens next is often thoughts that create overwhelm by the amount of change required to get out of the stuckness. So things like, I have to change this. I have to stop overeating. I must stop binging. I must stop stress eating. I must stop drinking. I must stop emotional eating. I'm continuing to gain weight, or I can't lose the weight and I just want it gone. I have to stop it now. Thoughts like this create huge emotions of overwhelm and then the sensation of tension in our bodies. And now we are paralyzed. I hope you are finding something useful from these episodes and this podcast. And if so, please share it with someone else in your life you feel it could benefit. This podcast is also now monetized. So if you really feel you are getting a lot from it and want to help keep it going, please go to the episode show notes. You can just scroll down from wherever you're listening. You'll see a description of the episode, And then you will see it says support this podcast. And then there's a link you can click on. You can click on that link, and that's where you can support the podcast. Even the smallest donation, like 99 cents, helps to keep me producing the podcast. And to those of you who have donated, I really, really appreciate the support. I really do appreciate all of you listening and sharing the space with me. Again, just very thankful for all of you. Overwhelm always leads to freezing or paralysis. So remember this thinking thoughts that create overwhelm. Remember, our thinking creates our feelings. So thinking thoughts that create overwhelm are what keep us stuck. This cycle keeps us stuck. And the solve for this is to set some small, doable daily goals that slowly move us into the behavior we desire. If the overeating or binging or emotional or stress eating is happening, setting goals like, I'm going to practice surfing through my urge to overeat this week 1 to 2 times. When I notice the urge to overeat, I'm going to set my timer for 10 minutes and sit and feel the urge. If I still decide to eat after this practice, I can. But I will not overeat or binge or whatever it is until I sit in this urge feeling for 10 minutes, or maybe it's 5 minutes, or maybe it's 1 minute. You want to start slowly and make it doable. And then, I'll do this at least once this week, or maybe you're like, I can do this twice this week. This practice builds your confidence, and you will find over time you are willing to do it more often. You're willing to sit and surf the urge more often. And then over time, again, you will find you have actually broken out of the rut and changed the pattern of thinking, feeling, and behaving that is keeping you stuck. Another one to consider is using what's called mental contrasting. And this helps you stay willing to keep making small changes towards that desired future that you have for yourself while keeping you realistic about the steps needed to change. So this is where you think about your ideal future while thinking about the short-term issues or factors that stand in the way of achieving it. So sometimes we just imagine our optimal future us, right? So sometimes we're just imagining our optimal future you. And this is kind of called indulging, right? Or, we kind of indulge in these fantasies of what it'll be like if I could just make these changes. And so you're very focused on future you and what it's going to be like and, all these things. So we're kind of indulging in that. Or we tend to think only about the obstacles or problems in our way to get there. And this would be called dwelling. So often we are either indulging or we are dwelling. And those things do not move us into any meaningful action. It actually takes our willingness to take action around these things. So thinking one way or the other of these things are going to keep us stuck. You actually want to do both together. So you want to think about exactly how you want future you to be, to think, to feel, or to behave while working on the short-term, intermediate, small changes that you're going to need to make to get there. So you don't want to indulge or dwell. You want to move into thinking about future you while including realistic changes that you can make. Remember, the most important thing here to get out of a rut or to get unstuck is your thinking and then making small doable changes. Some other ideas on the doable changes that are in relation to our example of overeating at night and then making those false promises to ourselves the next morning are things like I mentioned earlier on practice riding out an urge, or it could be something like if you always eat snacks after dinner on the couch in front of the TV, for 2 nights this week, I'm going to eat snacks at the table, but not in front of the TV. Or if you eat ice cream every night out of the carton, 3 times this week, you're going to eat it out of a small bowl. You can have more ice cream, but you have to put it into the small bowl each time. Here's another part of it. Stop the promises in the morning to yourself or after the overeat or binge. And I often get a lot of pushback on this from clients. It's like, what? But I don't want to overeat and I don't want to binge. So I have to promise myself not to. And actually, this is the part that is going to keep you stuck and stuck in your ruts. You are making promises to yourself and then you're breaking them, because you do overeat or you do binge or whatever. So really you no longer have trust in yourself. You don't believe that you can trust you. And now you have lost integrity with yourself. And when this happens on a very deep subconscious level, you are going to continue in your rut, right? You have to build trust, integrity, and confidence with yourself in order to make changes to get you out of the familiar and to get you out of your rut. And yes, we are in relationship with ourselves. And unless that relationship is a healthy relationship, which includes integrity, trust, and confidence, changes not only will not be made, almost cannot be made. So think of a relationship between two people. It is the exact same thing. If you have two people in a relationship and there's lack of trust, lack of belief, and no confidence, that relationship is considered unhealthy, and huge issues come about immediately or definitely over time. So remembering you are in a relationship with yourself, and if you want to move out of your familiar patterns and comfortable patterns that are keeping you stuck, we have to build trust, confidence, and integrity with ourselves. So when we make promises that next morning or right after the binge or whatever, where we say, okay, I'm never going to binge again. I'm not going to overeat today. I'll stop it today, or I'll change tomorrow. And then we don't. We are perpetuating the stuckness, the hamster wheel. So if you tend to do this, I want you to stop making the promise to yourself after the overeat or binge or the next morning. Just stop. Instead of making these false promises that keep you stuck, now you know how that works, make a goal that is doable for you, that is going to help build confidence and integrity with yourself. So a daily goal that is doable and that you can follow through on. Again, you've heard this from me before, something that stretches you a little bit, but you can follow through on. So instead of, I will never binge again, or I promise not to overeat tonight or tomorrow night or whatever, tell yourself, I will surf through one urge this week, or I will eat out of a smaller bowl, or I will eat one less serving of chips than I usually eat at least 3 times this week, or I will pour myself half a glass of wine every time I drink wine instead of a full glass. These are things that move the needle and actually get you unstuck and out of a rut for real and forever. So there are other reasons that I didn't quite go into detail, just trying to keep it to a certain period of time because I've been going really long with these episodes lately, but there are other reasons we become stuck in ruts, and some have to do with fear, and as well as with comfort, which I talked about. Some have to do simply with just habits we have performed over and over and over, and some are happening because they are familiar, which is what we discussed in this episode. So becoming aware, finding clarity, and understanding is again that first step. Once there, beginning to shift your thinking so that your feelings shift and therefore your behavior shift, and then moving into small, doable daily changes, like some of the examples I gave, are going to keep you out of that overwhelm and from staying stuck. These are the things that build trust, integrity, and confidence in yourself that then get you unstuck and out of that rut and into the places you really want to be in life. One last little side note. I just wanted to throw this in there because this is part of what I do, and I've seen how this can be very helpful for some of us. Accountability can help in this process as well. So look to seek out a friend, a mentor, or a family member who could encourage you and help hold you accountable to your goals. I hope you found something useful from this episode. something you can use immediately in your life to improve your sense of well-being. I do appreciate you listening, and please consider giving a review if you can from wherever you're listening, or passing it along to someone else you know who might benefit from learning these things. Thank you again for being here, and we will talk soon. Did you know you can find a lot more help from me on my website? Go to heatherheynen.com. Heynen is spelled Heynen, and get in touch with questions on all things I offer, like online courses for overeating, weight loss, goal attainment, and also my coaching and counseling services.